When you decide and you move forward, not even knowing how, but just decide and move, the universe meets you where you are. You're no longer being wishy-washy. When I was gas breaking myself, no help could find me, because what was I really deciding? Was I in or was I out?
Today, we are going to hear from a spiritual coach that has an unbelievable perspective on life and who you really need to be. So let's get started. One of the things I find just compelling about this is you had everything, maybe even multiple times in your life where you had everything, but then you've lost everything. Can we start with your journey and talking just a little bit about that? Because I think there's a lot of people that, ride these roller coasters where you're on the top of the world, then something happens and all of a sudden you're all the way at the bottom. And then a lot of people don't make it back from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just did with your hands is it's so right on, because I think if we can all change our perspective of what life is, you're elevating immediately. So life is that. It's this beautiful heart rate monitor kind of visual, right? Versus this fictitious illusion of it looking like an airplane takeoff pattern, right?
I've never met one person to have one of those.
Right. It's just like, but because of our wiring and comparison and judgment and all these lower level things, until you start to work on yourself, we look through the lens of, oh my God, but look at everybody around me. Like, they're successful. Like, it must have they're just there. Look at that. And none of that is real. What's real as spiritual beings having human experiences is that dip. And for me, I've had so many beautiful dips. And I say it like that intentionally, because everything gives you a wisdom, gives you a reflection, gives you a lesson, gives you a gift, no matter how low it was, right? Including for me, that biggest lowest point. I mean, I had lost my mother when I was 24. And then when I was 28, found myself a single mother with an 8-month-old daughter. And it's still like, I can feel it like crying on my garage floor. And I want to just emphasize that 8-month-old daughter. So nobody sets out to build a life, think you're with who you're going to be with, build a home. Like, my due date and the house construction date were neck and neck by like a week, right? So all this great creation, and then it's just done. And it was that night, like snot bubble, fetal position on the floor, giving myself the permission to just let it out, which we all need to do more of. So much more of. That was my first biggest awakening, right? Of really recognizing, you got yourself here. This didn't happen to you, right? I ignored red flags. I didn't honor my worth. I was trying desperately to fit a round hole into a square peg, because like, that's what you're supposed to do, right? And it woke me up to recognizing, if I want something different, I have to start changing. And that was really the beginning of the next leap.
There's a lot of things that happen that nobody really ever talks about, like the circle of friends. So I'll just use my example. As I was growing up, I had my best friends, and they were the same people that I was around as a young teenager, right up into my 30s. And my friends kind of grew up and we did a lot of fun things. But as I evolved, as I had crazy roller coasters where I hit some low points where many people, they hit that, and you really start asking yourself the question, do I even belong here? And that's where I was. And as I kind of came up that next uphill, I'll call it a battle, because it's really what it was. I started hanging around with different people that were living the life that I wanted to live, people that were doing the things that I wanted to do. Not my friends, because they were just living the same old life that we'd been living the whole time, which was usually blame everybody for everything else, just that life. And as that happened, I found myself drifting away from family members, my father, from drifting away from my best friend, because we had different places we were going. And it was some of the hardest things I had to go through, because you don't ever want to just say to your best friend or to your father, hey, listen, you don't support where I'm going. You can't understand this. So can I just put you in timeout while I do my thing? And then we'll reconnect later in life, when you can see that these goals that I had were my goals, not yours. And I don't need you to tell me that that's stupid, that's a scam, whatever. How do people handle that? Because it's not so much that we have that inner realization of where we want to go. It's sometimes we have those outer, those people that we surround ourselves that hold us back. And I swear they almost put like meat hooks in us and hold us down because they don't want us. I felt like they didn't want me to succeed. But I'm sure you see this a lot. How do
Oh
we
God, yeah.
battle that?
Yeah, Chris, this is an incredible direction to go because our purpose, just to clear the deck, as spiritual beings having a human experience, our purpose is healing, growing, and expanding. It is our personal evolution, right? As you heal, as you grow, as you expand, you see the world differently, you show up differently, you emit higher level resonance, like everything is different. So as we grow and expand, it would be like, as I'm explaining it, doesn't it seem silly to think that we're not going to also outgrow relationships, right? Like, how is it that we'll be able to change and show up differently and all of the variables in our life externally are going to stay static? So just opening up to like, okay, because what's really going on there on an energetic, emotional level is we're bonded to people, right? So if you imagine like two circles, almost like a two-circle Venn diagram, right? So it's just crossing over. That emotional bond, that's an energetic bond. And when you rise and you're liberating yourself from who you used to be, you are actively pulling that bond apart. So that's a basis of understanding, right? Knowledge is power. So going, okay, that makes sense. And then to your point, recognizing number one, it's our responsibility. So whether someone tries to quote, like they have their meat hooks in you, or they're trying to judge you, or they're pulling you down, it's your responsibility to not fall prey to that, to stand so firm in honoring yourself instead of betraying yourself to make other people comfortable, that you really show up and you can appreciate if my father, or for me, my sisters or my brother or my best friends, because I too have still to this day best friends from middle school, right? Like they were just at my house last weekend. Not everyone needs to understand everything I'm doing. And when people share with us their opinions, even if it feels like a meat hooking block, if you will, that's coming from their own fear, their own risk aversion, their inability to see the paradigm and the consciousness that you're in because they're not there yet, right? I believe that no one is ill-intended. We're just maybe more limited at different times, right? So that allows us as the, let's say, growing party to have a level of compassion, which then changes the connection point, even if we're breaking the bond. But it just doesn't have to go upset. It doesn't have to go low. It doesn't have to go negative. It can just be, for those of us that are rising in our consciousness, which to me is the direct equivalent of growth, because you're not growing without raising your conscious awareness. It allows you to then have that perspective of like, I appreciate it. I don't need to take it. I don't need the opinion. I'm not available for it. And, each person's journey is just as unique and valid as the next.
100%. Yeah. And I think where my struggles were is at that point, I did start valuing my dreams, my goals, and where I was going. And I started, I don't want to say selfish, but I guess at a certain point, like that's kind of how I looked at it, as I was going to be selfish and hold my goals really close and not let anybody take them. But I just felt like in doing that, I was pushing my friends away. Realistically, I did. I had to. One of my best friends, still very good, very close to him, but we don't hang out anymore because he's just such a negative human being. It's just how he was brought up, and he just can't get out of that cycle. So every time I'm around him, I find myself coming down to that level. So I've literally had to, and I refer to it like hockey, I had to put him in timeout. And, I feel awful sometimes because he's always like, hey, I miss you. I love you, bud. We got to hang out. And in me, I'm kind of like, not yet. I'm not ready to, basically be in that position again where I am brought down to that level. So I haven't allowed that to happen, which has been a very difficult thing for me. And I don't know if I'll ever get to that point where I can accept that point again until he gets to a certain level where I just feel like, I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but
no, you are. And let me interject with you, because you're honoring yourself. And that's what we need more of. And it is a healthy selfish, right? It is a healthy selfish that when we stand up and we say, this is my boundary, right? This is whether it's a physical boundary or an energetic boundary or it's a time spending boundary, because you honoring yourself gives permission for each person to honor themselves. And that's really where we need to go, because that's how we change the world, right? Like that's
I
really what
love
we
that.
do. That's right. Like that's how we change the world. We have to shift out of the paradigms of making sure everybody else is okay, which is like, our great grandparents and grandparents' way of being, and shift into exactly what you're doing. And here's the interesting part is it doesn't mean the sadness isn't there. It does, like that's part of our human experience. And to be okay with our emotions without the judgment of the emotion is how you move through. It's to say, I love that I'm honoring myself, yay me. And simultaneously, I can cry about this and not become the emotion and not conflate the two and stand really strong in who I am.
I teach people all about money. That's my business, is the money business. And I think a lot of people associate money with greed and with, an evil side, because they actually make money something that it's not. They take money from being the tool that it is, the means of exchange, and they make it into this I don't know, this devil, this terrible being. But in all of our journeys, and yours as well, we go through these cycles where we're doing well financially, we're making more money. And I love in your story, you had a big job. I think you were a VP making six figures. Like that's a comfortable living. And when you were making six figures, a lot of people want to just say that money, oh, you got all this money, like, life is so good, but it wasn't. Because too many people think that just because you have money, you make a good income, that everything's perfect in your life. And just because you can afford the nice car, the bigger house and all this, that you're in a good place. But you weren't. You were missing something. There was something that wasn't being fulfilled in your life. And just because you had money, and I bet you a lot of people around you looked and said you were crazy for what you did next. And I did the exact same thing. And this is why, I'm just trying to parallel our two stories. Not only are we the same age, like different journeys, but I was in Wall Street. I was making high six figures, doing phenomenal, but I was never content. And I never felt like I was following my calling and what I was put on earth to do. And it came to a head many, many times where I had all the things and I was so empty inside. And it wasn't until 2018. And, I wish I could go back then, and I wish I would have done it sooner, but I did it because something happened that actually gave me that out to get out of that realm. And I left. And in doing so, I went from making this high salary down to making about 40,000. It put a lot of stress on my family, put a lot of stress on everything. But that was the journey I needed to chase. And you took that same path. So can we talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. And just to echo and confirm, money does not equal happiness, right? It's part of, and I, every time I teach or every time I get to have a great conversation, I have nothing but appreciation and respect for our forefathers and our lineage and, all the people that did what they could. But we don't live in the Great Depression anymore.
Not yet.
Oh,
we might be heading there.
That whole mindset, and what was very pridefully like, right? My grandfather was in the Holocaust, met my grandmother in Poland, came over, as immigrants. So I started making men's suits in New York City. We're the story. So a lot of that gets kind of pushed into us, that it's about what you have externally. That's where the messaging comes from, right? What do you have? What do you have? What do you have? Oh, and then what you have directly equals how valuable you are. And that's what our consciousness revolution is shifting, getting us out of conditional happiness, get you to embrace that you are whole and worthy simply because you woke up today, right? And allowing us to shift the paradigm on money, wealth, and truly the way that we live and see the world, right? So for me, I was sitting in I worked from home. Talk about people think I lost my mind. Worked from home, making it into the six figures, like going to the gym when I want, doing what I want when I want, like right to the outside, like Tracy's life is grand. And there was actually nothing wrong. Like I liked my company. They liked me. I did well. I was talented at what I did, et cetera, et cetera. But when I sat with myself, my soul was like dying. Like, what are you doing? You have so much more capacity. And what about this? And how can you really help people change? And like, just all this calling of what you're doing is fine, but it's not it. And it's, similar to what started forcing me to try to squeeze the round peg into the square hole. We've been raised to kind of to always go through an order of operations, what society sees as successful. It's like we're all being judged down this big collective lazy river, right? And if you jump off the river to do something, you know, it's like, oh, there's judgment and there's shame and there's this, and it's like, whoa, you guys, this is, now it's time to change, because our academic world needs an overhaul, right? And all of these other things of how, you know, and I see it because I have 3 teenage daughters, you know, and there's not, the thing I am like crazy about with them is, tell me something amazing today. And when they answer me with something about their grades, I'm like, yeah, don't care. Tell me something real. Who'd you sit with at lunch? Who did you ask how they were doing, right? Where did you really, really show up for yourself, so that we can start to chip away at, you know, I'm as good as the grade that I got. I didn't go to college. I sucked at typical school, but here I am. Right? So point of my story is, we have to break out of the conformity and break out of the norms and recognize that it's our uniqueness and that our paths are different, and honor that for ourselves and for everybody else. Wow. And yes, everyone in my life thought I lost my mind. They're like, I'm sorry, you're going to do what? You're going to go back to school, like as a grown-up, and enter a whole different field? Oh, and then you're going to move out of your cushy gated community and lower your overhead so you could launch a business? Are you nuts? Here I am.
That's that moment in life where you realize, like, I can not do this. I can just keep doing what I'm doing. I can say, you know, actually, I don't want to go first. Like, can you pick somebody else? And you can not leap. But this is life. This is business. This is what you did. You made that leap, even knowing it was into the abyss, into the unknown, fear.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why now a huge part of my teaching and my work in the world is a new approach to fear. Because what's interesting about my story is, my calling was there and my desire was high. And on Monday, I was like, that's it, I'm in. And then on Tuesday, I would shrink away. So I made the leap, but it took me 2 years of sitting in self-doubt that sounded like, what if you suck? What if nobody likes what you're doing? What if everybody judges you? What if you can't come back to this job? What if you're not as good as you think you are? What if this doesn't work? And it was through the course of that experience that once I did take the leap, and I will share kind of like what that's about, because it's important for everyone to use as a truth of life. But once I made the shift and the leap, then I went, okay, I'm now needing to understand what happened here. How can I be so convicted and so ready to rock, but so paralyzed to make the move? What is that? And I got obsessively curious and started studying biology and nervous system and fear and risk aversion. And I was like, whoa, right? Your thoughts are options, not facts. And when you're in a situation, when you're in fear in your body is throwing up your thinking in an effort to get you to not do it, because the unknown is so scary unless you're conscious and you understand it, right? So my body was like, yeah, what if you suck? All these things. And because I wasn't who I am now, then I was just attaching to all those thoughts. Oh my God, yeah. And then I would get anxious and I would go down the rabbit hole of hell, and then I'd be paralyzed again. And then I'd have a hit of inspiration and I'd message the admissions director at the coaching school, who was so patient with me for 2 years. And I was like, no, I'm in, but can we get on one more call? And then I'd be back. And it was this like gas break. And when you decide and you stand in that decision, it means to cut yourself off from anything but what you decided, right? So then I decided, and literally the universe was like, here you go, baby. Got laid off from that job 4 months later. Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing, right? I'm like the happiest person on the planet to ever be laid off. And I love my CEO. She's like, Tracy, we have to eliminate your position, your department. I'm like, okay. She's like, I'm sorry, I don't think you're hearing me. I'm like, yeah, no, we're good. We're good. Because I've got this whole plan going on here, you know? And when you decide and you move forward, not even knowing how, but just decide and move, the universe meets you where you are. You're no longer being wishy-washy. When I was gas breaking myself, no help could find me, because what was I really deciding? Was I in or was I out? Hanging out and all these beautiful listeners are with us. Where are you hedging? Where are you not all the way in? because the reason it's not tracking
You
is
are, I
because you
think, the
haven't
perfect
fully
person to
given
ask. So
yourself
I have a
to
new
it.
daughter. She's now 20 months old. My first child, at 44. And, I watch her intently because, I've never really had, I was pro snowboarder and Wall Street guy. So I never really paid attention to kids. Matter of fact, my friends had kids, and I hate to say it, but I selfishly which didn't want to even acknowledge that. Didn't want to understand children, didn't want to understand anything that they were doing. I was in my space, in my world. But now I have this little girl and I watch her. And, seeing she's 20 months, but seeing her, she has no fear. There's nothing that she can dream up that is not possible in her life. I've witnessed this firsthand. Things that, as parents, you're like, oh God, don't do that. But then I'm like, yes, do that. So you can learn, like where the barriers are. But she has no restrictions. And I think we're all born with that. We're born and nothing is impossible. The world is yours. Or, as I say a lot, anything you ask of life, life will give you. Children have that gift. Anything they ask of life, life will give them, and they just go for it. But something happens throughout our life, and then all of a sudden restrictions get put in place. People tell us we can't do things, we shouldn't do things. Oh, that's bad. And then we build these, there are false beliefs, but we build these barriers around us saying, oh, I can't do that. That's not possible. Oh, this person said that there's no way I could ever accomplish that. Or I couldn't, be, an astronaut and make it to the moon or to Mars, people put barriers in our life. So with a 20-month-old in this world, and I think that's what scares me the most, we are in really weird times right now. I feel like we are in a paradigm shift right now, whether it's mentally, spiritually, or just the economy and evolutionary. There's big things changing. Like, how do I keep my little daughter who's free as a bird, like me jumping that jump, how do I keep her in that space and keep her from the people that want to put barriers up around her? What advice would you give to any parent? Sorry, that's a deep question. I
No,
didn't know how else to ask it.
I love it. And I just love this hangout time is really awesome. I actually am about to drop a whole new piece on this called Expander Parenting, which is a new paradigm on parenting because of the very much what you're asking. So the first most important answer is pay attention to who you are being, and your wife pays attention to who she's being. What we say to our kids, and I need to caveat this, right? We don't want to shame them and use language, but the thing that guides our kids the most is what we're modeling via who we're showing up as, right? So if you're comparing yourself and she sees that, she'll learn to compare herself, right? If you're judging yourself and she witnesses that, that's what she'll learn. When you allow yourself to show up in your fullest expression, you pay attention to your kindness, your compassion, like you are in all of the ways you serve the world, she is going to witness, I can be anything I want. I can be who I am. I can stand in my power. I can honor myself, because the first part of this has to be you working on you. And that's one of the gifts of this paradigm shift we're in at large. Like, it's the best thing we can do for anyone is work on ourselves. Most importantly, our kids, because of the biological connection and the daily proxy of them observing us. That's the first thing. The second thing is cultivating in her that nothing is ever about her. Not taking things personally, right? Foundational things that weren't the way we were raised because we just didn't know it then, right? But it's not about you, not to internalize, right? You are whole, you are enough simply because you are you, beautiful girl, done. Like, even if it's whispering into her ear every single night. And I did this with my daughter, Taylor, who is about to go to college. She's a senior. Unfortunately, her father, the dissolved relationship that I referenced earlier, he ended up not being the father that I had hoped he was going to be. And there was a lot of abandonment and a lot of alcoholism and things that went on there. And the thing I focused in on her the most was, it's never about you. It's never about you. Don't own it. Don't, right? And as a result, like, people go, well, like, this could have gone either way for her. And she is like limitless beyond, right? So to embed, because also right now, your beautiful girl is all subconscious mind, which is why she is fearless and why
Absolutely.
she is just imaginative and creative and all those things that we all need to use as a skill now. So to empower her, and to empower her with compassion, and if something doesn't go her way, to move into empathy instead of annoyance, right? Like next year when she's 3 years old and she's playing with a friend and someone steals a toy, it's just like, okay, it's starting to teach her hurt people, and let's be compassionate. It's all the things you want to see in the world, and you have this opportunity to gift it to her, because she's just taking it in right now.
Oh yeah.
Right, 24/7, 365. She's a video camera, and she's just like, mm, 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 mm. So we just want to think about what you are dripping.
So what is the Litt factor?
The Litt Factor is a human growth and potential company. My father's last name is Litt. Thank you, thank you. I can take no credit for that amazingness. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. What a name. And right when Litt started to be used as an adjective, right, years ago, like, oh, let's get Litt, this is amazing. Right around, oh my God, what's the show? Suits.
Oh,
It was like
yes.
a famous show, right? To get Litt, it was like all around that. So I was like, thanks, Dad. So we're human growth and potential. We focus on healing, mindset, and energetics work. And what we do is the inner game. So we do consciousness, energy, neuroscience, quantum law, metacognition, spirituality, all of those things. And one of the things we're best at is making it so digestible and so understandable that you finally understand how to work the work. It's like the how behind the hype. You know, it's easy to post like, change your thoughts, change your life. But if you really believe that, you wouldn't miss a day on paying attention to thinking about what you were thinking about. And that's what I'm after, because I'm after change. And inspiration is useless if you're not doing something with it, right? It's like momentary. But I'm looking for how do we ripple effect? How do we elevate consciousness? How do we change the world by each individual person changing? That's really how it works. So these practices and tools and programs that I've been able to develop through the course of my own experience, some of the wisdom that was gifted to me through my lineage and the beautiful women that have come before me in my bloodline, tons of learning, which is funny, you know, as uninterested in school as I was in high school and going to college, is as obsessive and interested as I am now about understanding spirituality and humanity and how we function as people, and then delivering it in a way that's like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Because when something makes sense to us, we'll do it. If it's too high level and too enigmatic, it's like, I don't know. It just stays too far away. But when we can just drop it down and be like, all right, this is how you actually change your thoughts. Done. This is how you shift your approach with fear so it never stops you again. Great. This is how you regulate your nervous system so you can get of being hijacked and, you know, frenetic and robotic and stressed out. And remember, you have a body. So it's all that.
I feel like I live too much in that world where I'm stressed out, going like my life is just so busy, and I'm trying to pull out of this because I understand the importance of quiet. And, you know, like some people call it stop and smell the roses. And, you know, I read a lot, and I read a lot about like incredibly successful people, and they spend a lot of time alone, just thinking, just, you know, maybe that's meditation that they're talking about, but I don't have that anymore. And I need it back, but I can't seem to find my way to it because of just busyness, you know, like everybody wants your time. Everybody wants to be on a call or a Zoom. And, you know, I think since the pandemic happened, you know, it was a big pivot for a lot of people, you know, the way that we do things, the way the world operates, just everything, you know, and that pivot has then resulted in almost, I think for some people it created more time, and for other people it took time away from them. Where do you think, well, since the pandemic, I guess let's start there. What do you think has shifted and changed with people? And then where do you think we're going? Or, you know, as I always say, what now and what's next?
Yeah. So if you were available to receive the gift of the pandemic, and I say that very intentionally, if you were available, because if you're not ready to wake up, you're not ready to wake up. And the next thing could be an atom bomb. Won't matter. Do you know what I'm saying? Every external circumstance serves as a flashlight and magnifier on whatever your journey is. whatever you need to work on next. So when COVID initially hit, I was calling it like the year that the earth, the universe shook the earth like a snow globe. I was literally like, all right, guys, you ready? What are you going to do? Right? Where are you going to assess for yourself your value system? Where are you still subscribing to this ridiculous hustle, overdoing, over efforting method that was gifted to us by our grandparents and our parents? It doesn't work. We don't need it. Right? So spaciousness is the answer. Where are you going to take a look at how long you want to hold on to that 25-year resentment that's still just killing your insides, right? So that was really the what did you wake up to? What are you going to keep? What are you going to trash? And now that we're pseudo back, right? And it depends on where you live. Like I live in Florida, so like life is normal down here, right?
Yeah, you guys, I'm in New York, so.
Yeah, okay, right? So we're just like doing, right? So interesting. So what are you going to simply revert back to without awareness versus, I love the spaciousness. We're going to start scheduling nothing on certain weekends so that our weekends don't get grabbed and scheduled, right? So it's like, what new choices are you making out of what you experience? My husband and I, who I love dearly, we ended up doing a lot of great marital work, because going from him being out of the house and me being in the house to then him working from home now forever, right? And 3 girls at home, like, whoa, all of the familial stuff started rising to the top. And I'm like, okay, gift, great, let's do something with it. So we did. So things like that is what the gift was. And then the question becomes, what real changes? Not like bullshit topical changes. What real changes are you going to make in who you're being and what you are allowing in your life as a result, right? And just like you were saying before, I want to invite you to take a next level of your own responsibility and be like, no, my schedule doesn't happen to me, right? You have the opportunity, Chris, to be like, okay, spaciousness matters. So I'm going to block, and I have a lot of my clients do this, like in their calendar as if it was an interview or a doctor's appointment, right? Nothing. It literally says nothing. Like you're going to do nothing. What do you mean? Not like literally nothing, like nothing. And honor that as you would anything else that you honor, and start to carve that out. Start to take breathing breaks throughout the day. You'd be amazed at what closing your eyes for 90 seconds and dropping into your body does. You don't even need actual blocks of time when you do that. So it's like little ways that you start to relax yourself and create an expansiveness and a spaciousness. And it's important for your body, or your system. It's important for your creativity and your perspective. Because even though we've all been trained, like I shared this recently in another conversation I had, I said, if somebody else observed us, like aliens, they would look down upon us and be like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Where are they going? What's all the rushing? This woman hasn't stopped. She's been holding her pee for 7 hours. Like, do you know what I mean? This is what we do. It's crazy. It's crazy. And we need to like make it unacceptable by changing it. And also in the spirit of your beautiful daughter and my daughters and anyone else with kids, if you're doing anything in the world, there is an element that you're doing it for generational change. We want to leave the world a better place, right? That's clear. We don't get to leave the world a better place if we don't change while we're here. That's the thing that makes me nuts. Like we talk such a good game, but who are you being and what are you changing? Because that's how we change.
I love that. So one of the other things too, we're talking about that change, and we all have inner voices. How do we tap into that inner voice? I hear it all the time, and more time than not, I unfortunately ignore it. And, like my wife, I know she talks about this a lot. She ignores it as well. How do we actually start listening to the inner voice and what it's saying?
Yeah. And when you say inner voice, you're meaning like that intuition, that voice that you can trust, not like the inner critic, not like the negative.
I don't know how to describe what it is. It's just that thing inside of us that tells us like we need to start listening, and we can ignore it or we can actually listen. I always like to say, listen, they say, listen to your gut, because usually not your heart. It's usually just something different. I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you now. I wanted to just make sure you weren't asking me like inner critic, because that would have been a different answer. So that weaves right into what we were just talking about. If you're constant, you won't be able to tap into that voice. and let alone trust it, which takes you on a journey of trusting yourself, which is one of the biggest journeys that every single one of us have, because no one was ever taught to trust themselves. We've been taught to be controlled, be dependent on, consultative decision. I have a decision to make. Let me poll 117 of my closest friends and see what they have to say, and then I'll decide. Right? Where I'm working to cultivate a world where it's like, you can give me whatever opinions you want, but I'm so connected to my body, and I've created such spaciousness and breaks in my day that I can close my eyes and I can ask the question and I can let my body answer. Because the way to listen to that is connection to self, which actually means disconnection from listening to your mind. None of us need help analyzing anymore. Like, we don't need more analysis. We need less analysis and more learning what it means to allow your body to kind of guide you to know, like, example, let's say you're invited to speak on a stage somewhere, right? And your mind might be like, yeah, okay, schedule it in. And maybe there's a little lack in there. There's a little, like, I don't want to miss the opportunity. There's FOMO, whatever, things that we all experience. But then you go, hold on a second, and you don't answer right away, and you close your eyes and you do some breathing and you drop in your body and you're like thinking about, you're like, is this opportunity a hell yes? You'll know right away. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. We don't need a maybe yes. We don't need a hedgy yes. We don't need a, I should do it because somebody else did that for, no. Because again, who we're being gives, like, it's like invisible permission to everyone who's paying attention to us. So if you decide to say thank you so much, like, I was just invited to do something right at the end of March. Thank you so much. I'm fiercely boundaried because I'm focused on other things right now. If you do it again at the end of the year, please let me know. Ooh, and my body was like, yes, like, you can feel it, and your body's so happy. And then you're not, like, things either tighten you and make you super constricted, or they make you super light and expanded. And we're after light and expanded.
It brought me so much to this book, that was written by Gary Keller. And I want to talk about your book too. But in this book, he says one of the most important things we all need to do is learn how to say no so that we can say yes to the right thing. And you just clarified that right there. And I love how you did it, because you did it almost in like how you felt after you said that. Like, you were like, no, but let me know later, but then all of a sudden you were in control of that decision. I think, we were brought up in a yes society where it's just too easy to say yes. Oh, yes, I'll do that. But then after you're remorseful of saying that, oh, I don't have time for this, then just say no. Like, no is the greatest thing. And you just brought that out of that book. And one other thing, and I got to just almost frame it up in a story that I read. And it was a story about a father and a son. And the dad had a ritual, like, most of us do. He came down, made his coffee, read his paper, and his son comes up to him one day while he's reading the paper, and he says, Dad, we never play anymore. Can we take a day and play? And the father's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. How about Saturday? Let's go outside and we'll play the entire day. And the kid's so excited. And Saturday comes around, the dad gets up really, really early, goes down, starts his paper, goes through his morning ritual, thinking, his son won't be up yet. But then all of a sudden he feels a tug at his leg, and he looks down and his son's there, nice, bright and early. And his son's like, oh, Dad, are you ready to play? And the dad had to quickly think, because he was deep into this article. And he says, yeah, but before we go out, let's play a game. So he tears out a page of the newspaper, which has a picture of the world, and he tears it into a whole bunch of pieces, throws it on the top of the table, and the table's a glass table. And he says, first, son, let's put this puzzle together. And the son says, oh, yeah, this will be fun. So the son sits down, and father goes back to reading it. And then all of a sudden, what seemed like only a few minutes later, the son said, Dad, I'm done. And the father thought, no way, that's impossible. Like, there's no way he put that puzzle together this quick. And he puts his paper down. And he says, sure enough, it's right there. And it's a picture of the world. And he says to his son, son, how did you do that? And the little boy says, Dad, it was almost impossible at first. I almost gave up, and I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden a piece of the puzzle fell on the floor, and I went down to grab it, and I looked up, and there looked to be a picture, what could have been a man. So all I did is, from under the table, I put the man together. And when I came back up and I looked at the top of the puzzle, the world had taken shape. And like, the moral of that story is sometimes we just have to put the man or the woman together. And when we do that, the world just takes shape. So that's everything amazing. You have said, I've wanted to tell that story the whole time, because like you just, everything you talk about is that. If we just put us together, the rest of it just starts to take shape, and it just brought that story out.
Yeah, I love that. I have never heard that before. That is so profound and emotionally amazing.
Think about it all the time. I mean, being a dad, I think about different things than I've ever thought about in my life. And that's the one thing I'm always thinking about. You know,
Yeah,
I gotta be the best dad, but I gotta put myself together in order to be
right.
that dad.
Yes, and that's the part of it that none of this is selfish. It's a healthiness. And it is the opposite of how we were raised. Everything is. That's what, to your point, we're in the middle of massive mini micro paradigm shifts, very large paradigm shifts, and it's essential. Right? We're in the 21st century. We can't operate with 20th century approaches. That just like is illogical. So yes, and it comes down to, how do you be the best dad? By you investing in Chris, your time, your spaciousness, right? How do you be the best spouse? How do you be the best
Working on
servant?
that one.
Well,
That's a working
dynamics.
project.
I feel you. But right, how do you be the best service provider, the best podcast host? It's when you see yourself as the asset, when you understand that doing for yourself, honoring yourself, not compromising yourself, investing in yourself is the thing that's going to get you the biggest ROI, because you're the common denominator in every facet of your life. And that's why our purpose as spiritual beings having human experiences is healing, growing, and expanding, because then everything else around us must change. It's entrainment, it's energetic entrainment. You change the variable of you, and everything around you is forced to shift in response to that change.
I've come to the conclusion that books are like the last great truth that there is. I mean, I've discounted news, I've discounted so much on social media, and I've dove deep into books. And you wrote a book called Worthy Human. You are the problem and the solution. Like, what motivated you to write a book? Writing a book's tough. Why did you
Yeah,
write it?
so many things. The first reason I wrote it is because I struggled with not believing I was smart enough my whole life. It's one of the first things I identified when I was on my own big growth journey, and I am who I am now, which I'm like probably 7 different iterations of who I used to be. And the part of me that never ever believed I was capable of writing was like, yeah, now that I've worked through, because now I know without question, like I am whole and enough. I am unattached to everything. Everything could leave tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't affect my Tracy Litt wholeness. It is my birthright, as yours is yours, and your daughter and your wife and everybody else. So the first reason was really to show myself what I was capable of and be my own expander, right? Sometimes we use other people as expanders. Well, if he can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it. And that's a beautiful starting point. But the thing that helps you shift your identity and upgrade your belief structure the fastest is when you become your own evidence for yourself.
I
When you're like,
love
oh,
that.
right? When you're like, oh shit, I do that. Whoa, oh my God. Okay. Like blow your own mind, right?
When you
And then this,
become your own evidence, do you know how powerful that is?
thank you. It's true. True, because also not only does it instantly expand, and there's a lot of different, I'm also a hypnotherapist, so there's a lot of different ways to reprogram belief structure, right? And do all the yummy work we must do to change. But it's instantaneous when you're the evidence, when it's you doing it for yourself. And it literally just shifts your belief structure immediately, which then shifts your identity. And your identity is dictating everything. So now you're like, ooh, what am I capable of? So then I was like, let's bang out a TED Talk, right? Another thing, I was like, didn't think that was gonna
And the topic of your TED Talk, Dear Fear, it's not you, it's me. Freaking awesome.
Thank you. Whole new approach to fear too, right? Which came out of my 2 years of fear paralyzation from that corporate leap. So it's just like, what else can I do? I am every day, I'm like, what's next? How can I go bigger, more badass, riskier? Because at the end of the day, this is how I think. I'm not getting out alive anyway. That is how I like, and I need everyone to take that approach because it's the only truth there is, right? So when you really realize, like, it's all meaningless, you're infusing the meaning anyway, right? You can make it mean anything. You're creating your own reality. We're all going to get to the end. When you're at that end spot, what do you want to look back and have seen? Because I would rather be satiated and joy-filled and fail like a maniac and succeed beautifully and do all the things and put myself out there and fall on my face and have all these beautiful accolades, all the things, right? Rather than get to the end and be like, oh, there's no time left. And I could have done all those things, because the fact is, is none of us are more special than anybody else. None of us are more special than anybody else. We all have capacity and ability and uniqueness. And we all, I believe, have a divine responsibility to tap into that, to make the impact we were born to make in the world. Whether it's being the best barista that Starbucks has ever seen. And I've experienced that, like I'm just going like, oh my God, this person just like made my day, like their energy, how they're showing up, right? Or you're building an empire, or you're on TV, whatever you're doing, or whatever. We have greatness in us. And when we move through our fear differently and we get out of the fear of success habits that we have that we're unaware of, and we embody our wholeness, then it's like, okay, yeah, I can. We get out of that low level, can. It's like, no, I can. Like, it's my responsibility to be the fullest expression of who I am.
You know, and I think you just said it, and I'm just going to repeat it. We all have the ability to make a massive impact, but to make a massive impact, we all have to start a journey. We all have to begin a journey somewhere. So I know that you help people on this journey. And if there was just one thing that you could give advice to everybody in their journey to making massive impact, what would it be? Where would they go?
Where would they go? I'm going to start with, well, I'm going to give two. The first is your decision to stop putting your focus and attention on the I'm not enough game that you've been playing and perpetuating. It's enough. It's enough. Because when you're subscribing to wherever you are on the I'm not enough spectrum, you're waking up behind the 8 ball. Your focus and attention is on comparison, and you're self-judging, and you're flagellating, and you're not showing up, and you're people pleasing, and you're saying yes to everything that we talked about before, instead of just being like, nope, and that's it. Right? So to make that decision to say, all right, I'm going to shift my focus and attention. I teach it as fa, right? Wherever your fa is what is coming back to you. So shift your fa out of that low level, because it's also low level consciousness. You're not connected to the oneness. You're not realizing that you're guided and divine when you're down here in the direct, right? And then the second piece is start to create space. We have to cultivate a noticing ability, really creating space, breathing, dropping into your body like we were talking about before. Making that the priority opens the gate for all the other beautiful parts of how do we show up? How do we be the full expression of ourselves? How do we make massive impact, which, by the way, directly equates to massive wealth, right?
100%.
So we start with decision, and we start with noticing, which is observing yourself. In Worthy Human, I write about it as like the hologram version of yourself. Like if you have the hologram version of yourself chilling out to the side of your desk or hanging around you all day, what is he observing about you, right? Where did you just roll your eyes? Where did you just not do what you said you were going to do? Where did you just shrink a little, right? Like, and that hologram version, like that's your partner, and that's your non-judgmental observer. So it could be like, psst, Tracy, you still haven't written that blog that you said you were going to do. What's going on there, right? Or isn't it interesting that you are still holding on to that stupid argument between you and David, and your ego's in overdrive? Interesting. And then it allows you to start to change.
Love that. So today is February 1st, 2022. We just turned into a new month. And I like challenging people, because I think, knowledge is great, but knowledge is useless if you don't take action. So I'm going to put some action to this podcast. This has been awesome. Every one of you listening to this podcast, you have 10 days, only 10 days to take a leap. And that leap is going to be the start of your journey. Because on February 11th, Tracy is putting on the Massive Impact Masterclass, and you have to be there. So you only have 10 days. So put aside all these excuses that you make for yourself as to why you can't be there. Oh, there's a football game on. Oh, I got to make dinner. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do that. Just stop. Find out what matters and start working on you. Just like I told that story about that dad who, the little boy put the man together and the world took shape. This is your chance to take shape. And you have 10 days to figure it out, because February 11th The Massive Impact Masterclass is happening, and you all have to make that decision to be there because you owe it to yourself. And all excuses aside, nothing else is more important. So Tracy, just real quickly talk a little bit about your masterclass.
Yes. So one of the things that I've also realized over this, the Litt Factor has just turned 5 years old. So over this beautiful journey that we've been on, I've gotten clearer and more understanding of who I really am in the world and what I'm here to do. And I realize that the way that I make my massive impact is by helping every one of you make yours. That's the ripple effect. That's what I get to do. So the Massive Impact Masterclass is going to be us hanging live, virtual on Zoom, interacting for 2 hours. We're going to take a look at like where you are really in your massive impact journey, whether you're already coaching, healing, entrepreneur, leader, whatever your impact is as someone of service. And I'm going to be, in my usual fashion, doing some truth telling and some direct coaching, and we're going to debunk some things, and I'm going to shed some light on some things. So it's going to be a really juicy experience so that you can understand really what impact is too. Where does it start? What is the connection between massive impact and massive wealth and all the other good stuff that's going to naturally come out? I'm structured and I'm also free flowing. So even when I do like my live events, I kind of have a plan, but not really, because it's important for me to be able to intuitively show up for the beautiful leaders that show up with me, right? So that's what we're going to do. And then the opportunity to apply to become certified in my certification work will open up at the end of that for those of you that are really ready to like lean in and learn all of this beautiful work that I've been speaking about.
That's awesome. So folks, there you have it. 10 days to put some action behind this knowledge that you just got and join her. I mean, it's 2 hours. Come on. There's nothing more important for those 2 hours than you to get to that masterclass. I know this because my life has changed by going to things like this masterclass. And not only that, now I do them and it changes people's lives. So again, you've heard it this whole show. This is where you start. This is where the journey begins. I don't care where you're at in your life. You might be like, oh, everything's great. Really dig a little deeper because I bet you there's some things you need to fix. So Tracy, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate your time and your work that you do because it's so much needed, especially right now. I think more than ever, almost like you were brought to this moment because now is the time where really everything you're doing starts to really change people's lives. And I appreciate you for that.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, I received that. The world needs all of us now more than ever.
Agreed. So folks, thank you all for joining Tracy and I on this show. It was a very good one. And please make sure you look into that. We'll put the link in the show notes so you guys can all register and be part of this Massive Impact Masterclass. And also check out the book, Worthy Human. You guys got to check that one out as well. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next show.
Thank you.
So if you like this video, I urge you, check out my other videos by subscribing to this YouTube channel. Hey, also, hit that little alerts button right up there. It's somewhere up there. Actually, smash the alerts button so that you are notified every time we put out a new video.
You don't always have the answers, but it just gives you do have experience, and a great coach, by the way, doesn't have great answers. They ask great questions.